هركي وبيتود بفادي حبسونود لاقي حصرونو وهذا كيو يخدونود وميطفى ميطفى هي تركي دين ديتو دي خامشلو دي شوتو دي تشيريه وبيتود بفادي حبسونو تبي وحدو مني شدو عاميدا هركي خيلا شضية بحاطة من خلال ليبي بتريه دي خامشلو.
Israel is yet again amping up its home demolition campaign inside of the West Bank. Today, what we saw was that the Israeli forces had entered a village near Al-Khalil, Hebron in the West Bank, and had attempted with several bulldozers to destroy Palestinian homes. Palestinians from the nearby village came and attempted to block the Israeli forces from doing so, and in response, of course, after these people had basically got on top of the building, have, surrounded the building so that the Israeli forces could not illegally demolish it, the Israeli forces brought in 12 jeeps worth of soldiers to attack the Palestinians and then later go to demolish the house. So take a look at this video. We're going to go into more analysis. A lot more has been happening inside of the West Bank. There's been, of course, the past bombardment of the Gaza Strip, which has just happened as well, and many different things to discuss. But check out this video of what just happened today.
ما بعرف يفوتوا الدور جايين هذول الجماعه جايبين روح يلا روح انت وياهم
اي دارت هناك والله غير نيام ايش يفرق لك اليدين مش الانو ايفو تزقوه ايفو ان روش ان ساكن مقر القيامه لا تروح مجموعه الله اكبر الله اكبر
Again, Israeli forces coming in to bulldoze yet another Palestinian home inside of the West Bank in Al-Khalil. They shot a journalist who was actually filming this incident, which was going on. They also assaulted a number of women. They tear gassed people, shot them with rubber bullets. And there's accusations of live ammunition being used as well. So we're going to have to wait to see how serious those injuries actually are at this moment. But this is just all for people trying to stand up and not have their homes demolished, essentially. That's what this has been, is that the Palestinian people are like, well, nobody's going to help us. International law doesn't matter. Israel knows that it's above international law. And not only that, but then later on in the very same day, near Jericho, the Israeli forces came in and destroyed 3 houses, making 3 different families homeless, and also came in and wholesale destroyed 350 olive trees. Because this is just what they do all the time. This happens on a daily basis, and now that Donald Trump is about to leave office, they're just amping this up like insanely. And then on top of that as well, we've had all the demolitions that have been going on this year, and the demolitions have gone on in the West Bank, in East Jerusalem, where they've actually had a record number of house demolitions in East Jerusalem this year, ethnically cleansing Jerusalemites from Jerusalem, Palestinians from Jerusalem, because of these home demolitions that have been ongoing. And also, what we've had is demolitions inside of the Al-Naqab, the Negev desert area, demolitions in Lod and other areas as well, inside of what is now Israel. And so these demolitions have been going on all over, and over 1,000 people have been made homeless. And in fact, the majority of them are children that have been made homeless in this. So they've made around 500 children approximately homeless this year. And absolutely nothing is done. The settlements keep expanding. They've crossed red line after red line of the international community in terms of expanding settlements, in terms of destroying Palestinian homes. And absolutely nothing happens to Israel, because Israel, basically, it's been communicated to it that it is above and beyond the law. And that's why, for instance, we saw just before that Israel was able to get away with bombarding Syria for the third Christmas in a row with absolutely, there's nothing that they're going to pay for this. There's no price they're going to pay for this. This year, in fact, as well, inside of the Syrian Jolan, which is occupied by Israel, right, and annexed by Israel as well. And of course, they're stealing the resources there, and Israel claims it as its own, and the only one in the world that recognizes this is the United States, specifically the Trump administration. Even the United States before that said, well, no, hell no, this is not your land. We're not going to recognize it anyway. We're not going to do anything about it, but we're not going to recognize it. And that's sort of what the Joe Biden train of thought is. When he's going to come in, he's going to be like that. Well, passive, we're not going to do anything about it, but we might give some light condemnation. Anyway, they stop farmers from coming into their farmland inside of the Jolan. They do this all the time. It doesn't matter. The bombardment of Syria, which was carried out over the weekend, which did not hit Iranian targets, this is nonsense. And the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights does not have sources in sensitive Syrian government areas. And it claims that Iranians and foreign fighters backed by Iran are killed in every single one of these strikes. It is not true. There is no evidence for it. They have no sources. It's all BS. And in fact, they know what happens before the sources that I have access to in Syrian military hospitals know what happened. They're claiming to know what happened, which is it's ludicrous. It's absolutely rubbish. Anyway, they use Lebanese airspace to do it. So they wake up Lebanese people in Beirut because they're flying their fighter jets over. Just yesterday, they invaded Lebanese territorial waters, the maritime border, broke through that, and then started firing flares off. This is what they do all the time. Thousands of violations upon thousands of violations of Lebanese sovereignty. Syria's not fired back at them one time this year. Syria hasn't done anything to them all year. There's been no provocation. And they're not hitting Iranian targets. They're lying. And any Israelis that are actually in the know that they're not hitting Iranian targets. Anybody that knows anything about Syria knows that they're not hitting Iranian targets or Iranian-backed targets. At least this year, they haven't hit anything. The only times they hit Iranian-backed targets or when they go and they bomb to the east of the country. In the west of the country, Iran is not stupid enough to put its positions very open for you to hit if it has positions. And it doesn't locate its forces there. It just doesn't do it. It's in the east of the country, around Deir ez-Zor and other areas as well to the east, where there's no air defenses, so you could hit them easily. People just know the most basic things about Syria, know that this is absolute BS. But of course they claim it anyway, and that's their reason. Because these are unprovoked strikes and acts of war and acts of aggression against a sovereign country, which should spark a UN Security Council meeting every single time it happens, but it doesn't. See, free Christmas days on a road, they can hit Syria. That's what they do. And it doesn't matter what they do, they've always got some BS justification for it. And if they don't have a justification, they just don't claim it and don't say anything about it, and they let the media try and assume what the justification was, and the people that are just fully backing them. And every time their government or military does anything, they just think it's good because, oh yeah, anything Israel does is perfect and good every single time, and they never make a mistake whatsoever. For instance, bombarding the Gaza Strip. What just happened in the Gaza Strip? The day after, in the morning after. So Israel said, oh, well, they fired 2 rockets. Okay, what did the rockets hit? Nothing. Where did they go? Nowhere. Nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And you respond by destroying sites which hit a mosque, hit a school, hit a rehabilitation center for disabled people, hit sports facilities, hit civilian homes, hit a children's hospital, and destroyed power lines in the Al-Tufah area. So that now there's hundreds of families which don't have any access whatsoever to electricity. That's what's just happened in the Gaza Strip, in an area which is declared by the United Nations as completely unlivable. And of course, they block medical aid from going into Gaza. Oh, it's all going to Hamas. It's all going to Hamas. And people wonder why, for instance, today, we've seen a military exercise with all of the different armed groups, Palestinian armed factions, participating in it, where they're basically running drills for the public and showing the people what they've been training for. And the Israelis are like, this is despicable. All these people, they're turning into an army. What do you expect? What do you expect? You take away, right now, the Israelis, along with the United Arab Emirates, are working to completely destroy UNRWA. That's the UN agency set up for Palestinian refugees after the ethnic cleansing between 1947 to 1949, which ethnically cleansed 850,000 Palestinians from their homes, okay? And, of course, that goes together with the UN recognized right of return, UN Resolution 194, which recognizes the right of the Palestinian people to return to their homelands. Of course, Israel wants to destroy this. The United Arab Emirates is on board with it. The United States withdrew all funding. Trump withdrew all funding from UNRWA back in 2018. And the one that picked up a large portion of that bill was the UAE and Qatar and other Persian Gulf states, which picked up the bill for UNRWA. Now they're wanting to destroy it. Why? Because they want to destroy the Palestinian refugee issue. UNRWA provides for 5 million Palestinian refugees, many of them living in abject poverty. In the Gaza Strip, for instance, they're completely dependent. If you look at Lebanon and the refugee camps, completely dependent upon it. In the West Bank as well, hundreds of thousands of people are now suffering because there's no funding to UNRWA. Inside of the Gaza Strip, lots of people are employed by UNRWA, and they're taking the funding away from this UN program. Why? Because they want to destroy the Palestinian right of return and say, well, Palestinians don't exist, Palestinians don't have the right to be Palestinian and return to their homeland. Oh, but yeah, it's not a racist system. Palestinians can't return, they don't exist, they don't have a right of return at all, and they don't have any connection to their homeland, and you're trying to say they don't have any culture, and they don't have a country, and all the rest of that. But somehow, Jews from all over the world have the right of return, despite the fact that there's converts to the religion, there's people that are who've never been there, who have no connection whatsoever, and have the right to go back to a land which they've never been to in their entire life. And it's not a racist system. Of course it is. This is the most racist system on earth, on every single level, and we could go through it. And what I'm getting at here in terms of these home demolitions, these bombardments, these illegal acts of terrorism, state-funded terrorism, against Iran, for instance, like we just saw on Iranian soil. What does this do when there's absolutely no pushback from the international community and international law is not respected whatsoever? What do you think happens? I'll tell you what happens. The people in the region, the countries in the region, which have been ripped to shreds because of the United States and Israel and its Western allies, look at the situation, look at the suffering of their own people, look at the sanctions, look at everything that's being done by Israel and go, well, we're going to take matters into our own hands. That's what's happened every single time with every single one of these armed groups which pop up in the region to resist US imperialism and Israel. Hezbollah wouldn't exist if it wasn't for 1982, when Israel went into Lebanon and killed 20,000 people. They wouldn't exist. Hamas would not exist again if Israel didn't do what it did to the Palestinian people up until that point. It came up and it rose up during the Intifada years. That's when Hamas became a thing. Later on, it got armed. It wasn't even armed until the 1990s. It didn't become a proper armed resistance until the 1990s. Why? Because you destroy their cause. You destroy their people. You kill them. You take their rights away. You throw away the rights of millions of people and tell them that they have no rights whatsoever. You can't operate on this level without people wanting to resist, people, making a stand, and that's what they're doing. That's why we've seen the military exercises today. That's why we will continue to see more violence and more war, because it's the only way to counter this. It's the only way, unfortunately, because international law has not worked. That's what's happened. International law has not worked. The international community has not done a thing about this and continues to not do a thing. And now people are going to starve to death because they're destroying institutions like UNRWA. That's what's happening. So don't be surprised if more violence happens and more war happens. It's inevitable because it's the only way. It's the only way. When your back's against the wall and you have absolutely nothing and you're dying, what are you going to do? You're going to fight, aren't you? It's obvious what's going to happen. So that's what we're seeing right now. And it's just absolutely, it's horrific. It's horrific. I don't even know what to say at this point more than that. Anyway, gonna end this video here. If you like this video, hit that like button. Don't watch this video if you did like it without hitting that like button. And of course, share this video, share the content, speak to people about this content at the very least. Try and pass this around. That Patreon link is down below. And of course, that helps this channel hugely. If you help out with that, more videos, more content, better content, you know the drill. So everybody, until next time, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell button so you get notifications for more updates like these. And I will try and deliver as many updates as possible on what's going on for everybody. So peace until next time.
وقانون الأمرين خاصة في فصل الشتاء وفي هذا الظرف بالذات. هذا ما تبقى من الخيم المحترقة. وقد نسى من ارتكب هذا الفعل الدنيء أنه لا تزر وازرة وزر أخرى. إنها بالفعل جريمة ضد الإنسانية. جريمة ضد الإنسانية.